Okay, so we have another assignment this week. These are normally supposed to be done like just in 1 week, but I think because we have a mix of students, some are face-to-face, some are online synchronous, some are online asynchronous. It just makes it more difficult for people to get together and to prepare. Um, so, you know, I'm giving you 2 weeks for all of these assignments. And in fact, I better put a due date on here. So due in 2 weeks before class. So I do think that even though these assignments seem a bit repetitive because you're both writing it and recording a discussion about it, um, I think the topics of the assignment are pretty good. I think psychological first aid, ACEs, and tonight we're going to talk about suicide assessment. So that's definitely an important topic. I also teach suicide assessment when I teach DSM. Maybe some of you also got this in DSM, but I'm hoping that even though it might have been presented to you in that class or even maybe assessment, that this will allow you to practice the assessment. So I did provide a lot of, just like last time, I provided a lot of different links, a lot of different resources. I provided 2 suicide screening questionnaires. One is the ASK, ASQ, not ASK. The other is the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale. They're almost identical, but I'd like you to look at both of them and pick one of them. They're very short. Suicide assessments are very short. And so, but I did include other resources, and that's what I'd really like you to look at. So, prepare before you make the video. Look at all of the resources, click on all the links, read. I also believe that chapter 7 in your textbook discusses this in detail. I think it's just kind of a necessary thing that every counselor should memorize these assessments. There is an older assessment, but I didn't think it was very good because it had a scoring sheet. And so, for instance, if you were a male, you scored higher than a female. The reason for that is that males follow through with suicide about 50% or more than females do. That's simply because they use more lethal means. They use guns and other means, as opposed to overdosing or things like that, that people can sometimes be saved from. But from most of the studies that I've read, the suicidal ideation is very similar. It's just that more males are, I don't even like to use the word successful, but they are able to follow through with suicide attempts. And they have more permanent ramifications statistically. So I didn't like that scoring sheet as much as these two. These are also much more simple. I also have a link about interventions, a link about suicidal behavior, a little video about prevention, and a national strategy for suicide prevention. All pretty good resources for you. Let's talk a little bit about the assignment itself. All these assignments are very similar. So you work with your same partner. Hopefully that worked out well this last time. And some of you are excited. Please refer to chapter 7 in your textbook as a primary reference. Become familiar with all the supplemental resources and links that I provided on D2L. Read, research, prepare before recording your videos. Do not wing it. This will take some time and preparation. So students evaluate their partner, students evaluate their own work as a counselor. Same form will be used for both evaluations. For the written portion, students have to complete the form twice, include thoughtful reflections and information. All of the forms are found in Appendix B at the end of the syllabus. And it's about 3 or 4 pages at the end of the syllabus in Appendix B. So you've got a self-assessment and a peer assessment. Those are pretty easy. How'd you do? You know, that doesn't take much. But the video documentation of the discussion, about 30 minutes, it doesn't have to be exact. Try not to get under 20 though. Recorded on Zoom, uploaded to YouTube, paste the shareable link in a Word document, and submit it to the Dropbox. Demonstrate counseling skills. Read the self-assessment, the peer assessment before, so you kind of know what they're looking for. You can make up your own case scenario, or you can use an example that's in the book, whichever you prefer. But make it pretty detailed. You got to talk between 20 and 30 minutes. So come up with, if you're going to come up with your own case scenario, make it a pretty detailed one. Don't use your own case, you know, and you can use a case of a client, but change the name, make it, you know, unidentifiable. And it's due in 2 weeks. I didn't see a lot about the written part for this. So, you know, there's no minimum, but so a page or 2, nothing crazy. And fill out the assessment, the suicide assessment. It's only like five questions. All right, so this is probably the most straightforward assignment you're going to get because it's so short. It's very to the point. However, I think that it's one of the more difficult things to deal with as a therapist, and there's a number of reasons for that. For one, there's been many times that I've dealt with a client where, you know, I didn't sleep that night because I wanted them admitted someplace, and wherever I tried to get them admitted wouldn't take them. So we came up with a safety contract and everything else. And so did, you know, at that time it was a hospital and the psychiatric floor. But when things like that happen, or if you talk with a supervisor and they're like, yeah, I think they'll be safe tonight, you know, uh, sometimes I disagreed and would not have let them go home by themselves. So in those cases, you know, I did not let them go home by themselves. I didn't go with them, but I made sure to contact some support. Um, and of course, they chose who they would contact if they didn't have family or friends that they lived with. Um, and you know, I, so I didn't break any confidentiality. They disclosed what they wanted to disclose, but I did not want them to be alone, totally alone. So I made sure that they did have some support that would be there until the morning. Um, the second thing I did was I lined up appointments for them the next day so that they had an obligation to go someplace the next day. So there's some strange psychological, I don't want to call them tricks, but it's the way our minds work. If we feel as though we have an obligation, a place to be the next day, uh, you know, it adds another level of safety for that individual. They feel some minor obligation to check in, however small. The last thing that I do uh, in this situation is that I want them to know that I personally care about their welfare, about their well-being, that their life matters to me, and that I would be distraught if anything happened. So it's important to know that somebody cares about your well-being, even if I'm a stranger, even if it's the first time I met them as a therapist. So I think all of those are key factors. And of course, we do make a safety contract. But if you add all of those things together, I think it adds quite a bit to their safety, at least for the first 24 hours, until they can get some further help the next day. Out of all of those things, one of the most problematic is setting up appointments for them the next day. If I can't set it up with other agencies that I think would be beneficial, I set it up with me. So I will bump another client in order to give them an appointment for the very next day. I would say that if an individual expresses some suicidal ideation that is not vague and they have a plan, then chances are pretty high they'll get admitted. If they tell me one thing and they tell the hospital another thing, chances are pretty low that they'll get admitted. And that's why 20 years ago, I recorded every single session for the safety of the client, for my own safety, but also for situations like this. If somebody expresses harm to self or others, that is a limitation to confidentiality. And, I was just as concerned about safety for others. I've had clients said that they would harm another person and they had a plan to do so. So, I think that All of these things need to be taken into consideration because, you know, I had some fears when I started counseling. One of my fears was that I might run out of things to talk about in the first 10 minutes of a session with a client, and then we'd be sitting there for another 45 minutes with nothing to say. I got over that fear. However, the other fear still remains. I don't want to have any regrets if I send a client out of a session and something bad happens. I want to make sure that I did everything I could so that that's what I can say. I did everything humanly possible to keep my clients safe. Fortunately, uh, I've never had a client harm themselves. I've had clients overdose. I've had clients stop taking their medications and they were killed by the police. I still think that, if the police had called me before the fact instead of after, I could have saved that client. But, the main thing is that, in every one of those cases, I feel like I did everything I could as a good counselor to keep them safe. And certain things are beyond our control as counselors. Doesn't mean we won't feel, saddened by a loss or a tragedy, but I think it's important that at least we don't carry regrets with us, and we can avoid those regrets if it means, staying 5 hours after the end of our workday to get them in some type of inpatient facility, so be it. That's life as a therapist. All right. So questions about either the assignment or the topic? All right, you'll read more about it, but and then we'll talk more about it in 2 weeks when you hand your assignments in.